We're covering general evaluator and the role of speech evaluator. We're going to start with general evaluator. The general evaluator, what do they do? I'll break this down into 3 parts for the general evaluator. The first part is before the meeting, what should the general evaluator do? The general evaluator is in charge of all evaluation that occurs during your meeting. What does this mean? Prepared speech evaluation, table topics evaluation, the team that is attached to general evaluation, which usually comprises of our counter, timer, grammarian. Depending on your club, you may have other people like the joke master and some other people that the team in that club have selected. The general evaluator is in charge of all these people. Evaluation, general evaluator. Before the meeting, the general evaluator should check up on their team members, especially if they're not very experienced. If they're experienced, you've seen them perform and you're confident that they know what they're doing, I understand that you may know that they can deliver. If they're not experienced, especially those doing this role for the first time, please check up on them. Find out, do they need any assistance? In Toastmasters, usually when you join, you're assigned a mentor. Hopefully all of you here, if you're new to Toastmasters, you already have a mentor. That means you can reach out to your mentor regarding delivering speeches and playing roles. Ideally, your mentor will assist you. Toastmaster International also has this massive space to give you resources for whatever you want to do. Speak, play roles, you can go there, watch videos, read on any information you need. But your mentor is also there. However, I do know that the mentor may not assist certain people before they give their first speech, before they play a role for the first time. It's not ideal, but it happens. As a general evaluator, by reaching out to people, you get to find this out. In that situation, you may assist them or direct them to their mentor. Whatever you choose, you need to ensure that they are prepared to play that role. This is very important. Also, advise your team members to show up early. Why should they show up early? 1, to help them relax. 2, to network with other people, guest members, very important. It's part of what we do here at Toastmasters. And 3, to ensure that they're actually there to play their roles. If they're not there before the meeting commences, then you need to find a replacement for those people that show up late or don't show up at all. What type of replacements can you get? People already playing roles can play multiple roles, or some Toastmasters that are not playing roles can take up the responsibility of playing the roles of those who are not there or they are late. General evaluator, please remind your team members to show up early, not on time, early. And if for whatever reason they can't do that, hopefully they'll give you feedback in advance. That's the first step. Second, during the meeting. During the course of the meeting, usually, most meetings will start with the Sergeant at Arms, who will now hand over to the President, Toastmaster of the day, who now introduces you. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. Another thing you should do before the meeting, because you're going to be introducing your team members, please familiarize yourself with the pronunciation of their names as well as the introductions. What does this mean? You can memorize the introduction if you have sufficient time, or at least read the introduction. Why should you do this? There may be grammatical errors in what is written up. It may be written poorly, meaning it's really confusing. You need to confirm if anything needs to be changed and make the amendments in advance, not when you are reading it. I've been to meetings where the general evaluator begins to introduce their team members and they are confused. Maybe it was poorly written, something was omitted, and they are thrown off. Introductions are important because they set the stage for the audience to know why they should listen to the person coming up. Confirm that the introduction is well written, it's accurate, and you know the person. I've also been to meetings where this person was introduced as he during the introduction, and it turns out that it's a woman. If you're one of the audience members, how do you think you'll feel when you hear that introduction and you see the person completely different from what you were expecting? It doesn't exactly foster any form of trust in whatever it is the person is going to say, as well as the person that introduced them. Please go through the introduction in advance, confirm whatever you need to confirm, know that you know how to pronounce their names, and then do the appropriate introduction when the meeting has started. Now you're called up as a general evaluator. What are you to do? Tell the audience your responsibility. Anytime you come up to the lectern to speak, you are delivering a speech. Introduction, body, conclusion, especially at the beginning of the meeting. Very important. Let them know as a general evaluator, you're in charge of the evaluation of everything that goes on at the meeting from the start to the very end. You're not doing it alone. You have a team and you're going to introduce your team. Note, general evaluators start their job before the meeting commences. What do I mean? You are paying attention to everything that happens. What are some of the things you should be paying attention to? How guests and members are welcome before the meeting starts. Is it warm, friendly? Is it engaging? Usually the Toastmaster of the day is responsible for that. I know some clubs will have other executives, maybe VPE, VP membership also handle that, maybe the president, before the meeting commences. Did the meeting start on time? Did the sergeant at arms play their role properly? What about the president's speech? How was it? This means the general evaluator should familiarize themselves with the proper running of a meeting. This will enable them know what to pay attention to and give adequate feedback. Very important. You let them know what you're doing, and then you introduce your team members one after the other. When that's done, you come back, let the audience know that at the end of the meeting, your team and yourself will come back and give your reports. And you can give whatever conclusion you want to give until the very end. When that's done, you hand over to the Toastmaster of the day. Now, depending on the structure in your club, some clubs, right after prepared speeches, the general evaluator is called upon again to handle the prepared speech evaluation. Some other clubs, all evaluation, they're all done at the end of the meeting, which means the general evaluator is not coming back up until the very end. Please get the agenda in advance so you know the order of the meeting for that specific club you are playing the role of general evaluator. Then the meeting continues, prepared speeches, table topic speeches, and finally, evaluation. You come up and you call all the team members depending on the structure at that club, which means it may include prepared speech evaluators, table topics evaluators, and then finally your core team, timer, grammarian, R counter, and any other team members that specific club included as the evaluation team. When they all give their reports, you come back and finally give your general evaluation for the entire meeting, which will comprise of the things I mentioned earlier, as well as feedback on prepared speeches. Were they well prepared, maybe aligned with the theme, feedback on the evaluations on the table topics, meaning table topics master, table topics speakers. You may not delve into things that have been touched by your team members, or if you think there are some things that were really salient that they missed, you can talk about those things. How did the Toastmaster of the day do their job? Humorous, engaging, appeared well prepared, the segues were top-notch. Any feedback you can give. Use our regular feedback method, meaning commendations, recommendations, and commendations. up to that point when you're giving your final reports. Note, when you're giving recommendations, you pick specific points that you're giving the recommendations. For instance, the meeting did not start on time, and give feedback on how to improve that if you know. What could we have done better to start on time? Or because we knew we're not starting on time, maybe the Toastmaster of the day in advance should have let the audience know we're going to be late 5 minutes, 10 minutes for whatever reason. That is also a recommendation to give. And once you're done with that, conclude with a commendation and you're done for that meeting. Note, I said the responsibility of general evaluator split up into 3 parts: before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting. Your job during the meeting is done. Now, after the meeting, because you lead a team, I always recommend appreciate your team members. Phone call, voice notes, text messages, whatever form you want to appreciate them, please do so. Why? One is teaching you to lead. Leadership is about building people. And one of the core elements of that is appreciating what they've done. And in doing that, you remind them that they added quality to that meeting. Without them, you would have not had the same meeting. And that encourages them to want to do more, which is part of why we're here in Toastmasters. We grow by doing. And that little extra step will encourage people to keep doing what they've been doing and hopefully more. You're a leader. Please lead by example. Before, during, after. That's a quick summary of the responsibility of the general evaluator. Any questions or comments for the role of general evaluator? You can write questions or give your comments in the chat box, or you can raise your hands and I'll call you and we can listen to that. Please, Toastmaster Kudus, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Toastmaster John. So I just wanted to comment on the role of general evaluator before the meeting. I could remember when I played the role of a general evaluator, I made sure I reached out to everyone that I'm supposed to reach out to. But the mistake I made was I just feel, oh, this person is a Toastmaster. Definitely, she would know what she's supposed to do, right? Because I asked she was a Toastmaster. I didn't ask her, do you know how to play the role? It was during the meeting that I knew that this is our first time. That was our first time playing that role, and it didn't go well. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Toastmaster Kudus. Very important. Find out. If you don't know, please ask the question. I think the last time I played the role too, there was someone playing the role of timer for the first time at that club. And if I had not reached out and asked her the question, I would have had no clue. We actually had to briefly go through how to play the role of timer in a virtual meeting, because that meeting was a virtual meeting. I was so glad I did that because the timer role, very, very important. Toastmaster Basira, please go ahead with your question or comment.
Good evening, Toastmaster John. Hello?
Good evening. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much for the explanation of the role of the general evaluator. My question is, as a general evaluator in a meeting, when you notice a speaker who has spoken and the speech evaluator gives a feedback, and while giving the feedback, you notice the speaker did not meet the objectives of his or her project, but the speech evaluator says he or she met the objective, how do you address it as the general evaluator? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question, Toastmaster Basira. Where the objectives of a particular speech is concerned, I don't think the general evaluator needs to address it from the stage, meaning when they're delivering their reports. Afterwards, you can go out and inform the speaker, but I don't think there's a need to speak on that from the stage. Remember, and this is probably something the general evaluator can say to the general audience, everyone you see speaking today, playing a role, giving speeches, we're all here to learn. Especially when you see there's such a massive contrast between speakers. Some are so good, some appear to be so poor. Explain to the audience, everyone here is learning. No one is an expert, which means some feedback we may be giving may not be so accurate because we are learning. And some people may not be able to give much because, once again, we are learning. Some will give way more because we are learning and we're all at different stages. If you can, please highlight that. But where the objectives of the speech is concerned, no need to say anything from the stage. Afterwards, speak directly to the speaker. And I always recommend, if a speaker does not meet the objectives, please advise them to do that speech again. Let them take that project. It does not help that you speak every single week, but you don't meet the objectives, because the objectives are there to help you garner certain skills, to perfect certain skills that you otherwise may not have had. Recommend to them away from the stage that they should please do it again. So that's my recommendation. Toastmaster Basra, I hope it helps. I'm sure it's going to come up a number of times, especially if the speech evaluator is not so skilled in giving evaluation.
Yes, thank you so much. Very helpful.
You are welcome. Now I'm moving on to the second role we're covering today, which is the role of speech evaluator. Toastmaster Basra has set us up perfectly for this role. Speech evaluator, what do you do? Once again, I'll break this into potentially three. First, what does the speech evaluator do before the meeting? Before the meeting, ideally, they would have told you who you're evaluating. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes, unfortunately, they mention who you're evaluating during the meeting, meaning the agenda was prepared last minute. That is not ideal. The ideal situation before the meeting, you know who you're evaluating. If you've not been given the evaluation slip, please request for it. Get it before the meeting. Review it, know what exactly the objectives are and what you should focus on. Reach out to the speaker. Confirm if there's any extra thing they want you to focus on and pay attention to that. Also, please confirm the pronunciation of their names, especially if you're going to be using it during the meeting. But it's just proper to do that. This should all occur before the meeting. If they need some assistance, maybe they're delivering their speech for the first time or this type of speech for the first time and they need some help and you're in a position to assist them, please do. Assist them how you can, giving them time for rehearsal, giving them tips, giving them links where they can go to get extra assistance, or just directing them to their mentor. All this occurs before the meeting commences. During the meeting, what do you do? For speech evaluators, you are called up right before the speaker comes up to deliver their speech. The request is, tell us the objectives of the speech. At that point, you state the objectives of the speech and then hand back over control to the Toastmaster of the day and listen to the speaker deliver their speech. A speech evaluator should be familiar with what a good speech is. Please try and think about what a good speech is, learn about it. If you've been in Toastmasters for any length of time, you've been learning about how to deliver a good speech, which means you have quite a bit in your arsenal where the knowledge of a good speech goes. What are some things that you can pay attention to? Does it seem like the speaker is actually genuine when it comes to the way they are speaking? Is there some form of passion? Can you feel the emotions when they speak? How was the introduction? Was it really catchy? The conclusion, were there emotional highs and lows? Why am I highlighting those parts? Generally speaking, for speeches, people remember three parts. The first, the introduction. The second, the conclusion. And the third, the emotional highs and lows. Your emotion helps your memory. When emotion is attached to information, people remember it over the long haul. Pay attention to those parts. You're also going to pay attention to body language. How did they start with a smile? If it's appropriate for that speech, were they smiling at the right points? Were they frowning, or they looked like they were crying, or they actually cried at the right parts of the speeches, the vocal variety? Did they speed up at the right time? Slow down at the right time? What about the effectiveness of the use of pause? Were they pausing to ensure that you got the important information, or pausing to prepare you to get the important information? Were they pausing sufficiently to think about what they were going to say, or they were rushing so quickly that they forgot what they had to say? Pay attention to these elements. Even things that are often ignored, the way they stood up and approached the lectern, the handshake, all these things actually shape the way people perceive the quality of their speech. And naturally, too, when they were done, were they composed enough to wait, give a handshake, and then leave the lectern? The speech evaluator, you pay attention to every single part. But the most important thing that you should pay attention to, one, the objectives of the speech. Did they achieve the objectives of the speech? And two, whatever they asked you in addition, to please pay attention to. When they are done with their speech, compile your reports, and then you come and give feedback. A few things when it comes to giving feedback. One, we use the CRC method: commend, recommend, commend. Have a few points of commendations, things you love, few areas to improve, recommendations, and finally end with a few more things that you loved. Notes: give feedback based on the individual. And what do I mean by this? Someone that is a seasoned speaker, very confident in their delivery, the way you give them feedback should be different to the way you give feedback to someone that is new to intentionally speaking in public, and they are scared of their performance. The seasoned speaker, the confident speaker, by all means, give all the recommendations that time will permit. Note, you have to look at the time allotted to you. The person that is scared, please, you are not here to make them run away from speaking. From the lectern, give more commendations and fewer recommendations. Off the stage, you can now give feedback on other things they need to improve, if it's appropriate for the stage they're in. As the speech evaluator, you may not be familiar with what is appropriate, but to the best of your ability, try and gauge the type of speaker and how much recommendations you should give for different types of speakers. Depending on the time allotted, usually 2 to 3 minutes, you may have time for maybe 2 commendations, 2 recommendations, end with 2 commendations. Note, you're giving a speech. You're carrying the audience along, which means your speech should also have introduction, body, conclusion, or at worst, maybe body and conclusion. It should be a mix of speaking directly to the speaker as well as speaking to the audience, because you're carrying them along. You don't want your evaluation to be done in such a manner that the audience feels disconnected. People are picking up their phones, they're talking to one another. That's a bad speech evaluation. You are speaking both directly to the speaker as well as to the audience as a whole. This is very important. Once you're done giving your speech evaluation, go back to your seat. Your responsibility there is done, unless you want to feel the evaluation slip right there. It could be physical, it could be virtual, or you could do it after the meeting, which is why I said possibly 3 parts. This third part could happen after the meeting, but you can also do it during the meeting, right after you give your evaluation. In fact, if you have a lot of time, maybe even before you stand up to give your evaluation. In summary, that is what the speech evaluator does. I think a chat dropped in. Let's see. Okay. All right, no problem. Now, any question on the role of speech evaluator? That's a quick summary. Please, you can raise your hand or drop a comment in the chat box. It can be a question, it can be a comment based on your experience. Toastmaster Usman, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Toastmaster John. Good evening, and thank you for the explanation of the role. My question is, when we are playing the speech evaluator role, you said we focus on the purpose of the speech objectives. But then on the second page of the speech evaluator form, we have those other objectives, let's say the clarity, the vocal variety, so do we consider all that for every particular speech we do? How do we balance the two between the speech objective and those requirements that are always there for every speech?
Toastmaster Usman, what a great question. Thank you for that. Let me try and summarize it. You said, I mentioned the fact that we should pay attention to the objectives of the speech. However, in the evaluation form, there are other things that are required of you to pay attention to. How do you balance the two? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Yes. Great. Now, think about it this way. There's the primary objective, which is what is stated for that specific project. However, every speech is a speech, meaning there are core elements to a good speech. And no matter what your primary objectives are, your speech should still have the core elements. Because you're paying attention to just the primary objectives, it does not mean you now discard the secondary ones and your speech is so abysmal that you don't know how to connect with your audience. People forget about it. You cannot do that. There are primary objectives and secondary objectives. Take your primary objective as the core objectives stated on the evaluation form. The secondary objectives have a great speech. Those two should always be part of whatever speech you're trying to deliver. Anytime you step up, you come up, you sit down in the virtual space to speak. Does that help, Toastmaster Usman?
Yes, so much. Thank you.
You are welcome. Any other questions? I think there's something in the chat box right now. Okay. I see. Could I please give an example using CRC? By all means, Toastmaster Basira, I believe this person has said this. If you're giving feedback, you come in, give your introduction. You'll all agree with me that it was worth being here, if for nothing else, for that speech alone. Toastmaster Basira stepped to the lectern with such confidence that I wanted to pay attention to whatever it is she was going to speak on today. Did you notice her smile? Oh, it was so captivating. Toastmaster Basira, I don't know how many years you've been practicing, but it is paying off 100%. As if it's possible, there are a few areas that will probably improve the quality of your speech. For instance, when you told us 1, 2, 3 points on how we can become better students, I would have loved if you told us a story. And from that story, now draw out those 3 points, because we remember stories better. Despite that though, I love the way you concluded the speech. It was so touching. You genuinely spoke about somebody who touched your life, and we could see it in your face. It was just so emotional for you. Toastmaster Basira, I look forward to you delivering another speech of this quality or higher. And I assure you, the way you've captivated us, whatever audience you speak in front of, you'll captivate them as well. Toastmaster Basira, did you note the commendations, recommendation, and commendation?
Yes, I did. Thank you so much.
That's it.
Thank you.
Just pick out some points that are positive. Give a place or places that they can improve upon, and conclude with positive areas. And note the segue. This is my recommendation. You don't necessarily have to do this. But when you're going from commendation to recommendation, I try to advise people to, if they can, not use words like but for that commendation to recommendation. Because some people interpret that as, this was great, but despite all that greatness, it was still bad. That word alone, some interpret it as though it's negative. Usually when I give feedback, the same way I did here, I stated in this specific scenario, as if it were possible, a few areas that could enhance the quality. I didn't use but or however there. Not that it's wrong, it's just the way some people interpret it. If you can find another way to make it still seem really positive, I highly recommend that. For that first transition, commendation to recommendation. Oh, I think some more. Toastmaster Jagun, please go ahead.
Good evening, Toastmaster John. Thank you for this session. I must confess, it came at a very great time for me. I am playing these two roles tomorrow, and I was just thinking, how am I going to prepare? And I just saw the message about, oh, these are the roles we are tackling. So thank you very much for this session. I would just like to add some comments to some of your suggestions. First, the one you just mentioned about using the word but, I also agree. It's something I've heard, even in other contexts outside Toastmasters. Many times when you use a but after saying something positive, it tends to cast doubt on everything you've said before the word but. So I also agree with that. Then I want to also talk about the part you said about taking a look at the evaluation resource. It is very important to look at the evaluation resource before it is time to evaluate, because that is what is going to let you know what to watch out for. And also, if you are ever in a position where you have to prepare a meeting agenda, it is also important to take a look so that you know how to assign evaluators. I think I have been in a situation once where role players were already assigned, evaluators were assigned, and I just saw evaluation resource. And it seemed like it was a specialized evaluation. You weren't evaluating the speech, so to say. It was one of those special speeches. I think it was like a long session, moderating a panel or something. And the evaluation was basically tailored to something else. So if you are in that kind of situation and you don't look at that resource beforehand, assigning evaluators would have been done wrongly, and also you would not know what to look out for when you are evaluating such presentations. So that's just my contribution. Thank you, Toastmaster John.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Jagun. That's so apt. Please look at the evaluation slip before the meeting so you know what you're doing. That being said, before I dive into answering the other comments, we're officially done. Please, we're officially done with the two roles. And I love to end at 9:30. It's because we're answering a few questions that we've gone beyond. If you want to leave, by all means, feel free to leave. If you want to stay to listen to our responses to other comments, as well as the other roles that some others have requested for, feel free to do that. But we are done and you are free to go. We'll be here next week, Friday, 9 to 9:30, where we'll cover two other roles. Now, Toastmaster Fatima asked a question regarding delivering a speech, and the evaluation told her to repeat the speech because her performance was not good. How do you keep your motivation? Toastmaster Fatima, that is such a beautiful question, because really, many of us, we lose motivation quite easily. Now, you need to be more aware of your personality. What motivates you? Why did you join Toastmasters? What do you hope to achieve? These are some things that can help you stay motivated. Now, do you have a mentor as well? You probably need to discuss with your mentor. Hopefully, you have an amicable relationship with your mentor. and your mentor can speak to you in such a manner that you stay motivated. But remember, why are you doing this? It's important to spend the time now honing those skills, mastering those skills. Yes, it's painful. How many of us want negative feedback? Nobody wants that. Yes, we want constructive feedback, but depending on where you're coming from, it can be challenging, especially if you spent all this time preparing for that speech and in your mind, it was such an excellent speech, only to hear you did a poor job. Do it again. Hopefully, it was not that harsh, but the way we may have perceived it could have come across as harsh. Why are you here? What do you hope to achieve? Remind yourself, if you're here to get better, it is good to repeat. Repeat as often as you can and fail as often as you can, because that's how you get better. If you truly trust the feedback, the quality of the feedback the person is giving, great. If you're questioning it, maybe you can have second, third inputs regarding that, because so many people heard the speech. You can ask them, really, it's your choice. Do you believe they were being honest or just being harsh? It's your choice to repeat. If there's any hint of sincerity with that feedback, I highly recommend, as painful as it may be, that you do it again. Do it now. The time you're taking to improve now, you will reap the benefit much later. You're not really going to remember all this. When you're succeeding and you're improving and people are giving you the accolades, you don't really remember that time that they said you had to repeat that one speech. You don't really remember. But if you don't repeat it now, don't garner the skills now, it will take you so much longer to acquire skills you should have acquired at this moment. Self-awareness for me is paramount for you getting better, Toastmaster Fatima. The why, the goal, those feelings and reasons should overpower the sadness you feel over the negative feedback and the statement to repeat your speech. Toastmaster Fatima, does that help at all?
Yes, sir, it does. Thank you so much, sir. But I have a question.
Oh yeah, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Am I to repeat the same speech I delivered, or to do another speech with another story?
Yeah, I understand your question. You said, are you to deliver the same speech or to do a completely different speech, correct?
Yes, sir.
The choice is up to you. You can do the same speech and infuse the objectives into it, or you can discard that and do something completely different. The goal is to meet the objectives. The choice is yours, Toastmaster Fatima.
All right, sir. Thank you.
You are very much welcome. Before we talk on the other roles people have requested for in the chat box, is there anyone else that still has questions on either of these two roles, general evaluator or speech evaluator? You may raise your hand and then ask your questions. Okay, for now, I think that's all. I'm going to address the two other roles briefly that have been requested for. First, grammarian, second, table topics evaluator. First, grammarian. Grammarian, what do you do? Two things, before the meeting, during the meeting. Before the meeting, grammarian is to get the word of the day most times. I know there are a few clubs that hear VPE, maybe Toastmaster of the day, but generally grammarian, get the word of the day, get the examples. You're going to tell them during the club meeting what the word of the day is, give them the examples of how to use it, and keep track of how it's used. Please get a word of the day that you know people can infuse into their speeches. It's something that is going to be relevant for daily life, not some abstract and enigmatic word that you use once in 10 years, once in 30 years. Let us get words that actually improve our grammar and our eloquence. Very important for the grammarian. I tend to recommend more positive words than negative words. Oh, some other comments are coming in. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Welcome, welcome. Okay, great. I tend to recommend more positive words than negative words. That is what you do before the meeting. Please show up on time, meaning early, not when the meeting is starting. Engage with people, networking, and then prepare for the meeting. During the meeting, the general evaluator is going to introduce you as a grammarian to come and tell the audience what your role is as a grammarian. When you're introduced and you come up, remember, any role you're playing, you're giving a speech. Introduction, body, conclusion. Design it as you deem fit. 2 parts to explain when it comes to the body of your speech. The word of the day. Word of the day is something people are to infuse into the speeches they deliver. Anyone speaking for that day, try and utilize it. At the end of the meeting, you'll come back and give a report of who used the word of the day, how many times they used it, and those that used it inappropriately. Now, let me highlight inappropriate. 1, they completely miss the meaning of the word. That's inappropriate. 2, which is often not paid attention to, they overuse their word, they abuse their word. Or rather, the word of the day, excuse me. One of the reasons we're learning new words is to ensure we improve the quality of our speeches. Rather than repeating the same word, we're able to replace it with synonyms or words that mean what you intend to say, rather than using rather mundane words. That's why we're learning new words every meeting we go to. This means that if someone is delivering a speech and in a space of 1 to 2 minutes, they use the word of the day 10, 15 times, they've completely missed the point. They should be using other words. It becomes redundant at that point. However, for many of the clubs I've been to, this is mostly ignored and people try and utilize the word of the day as many times as they can. In fact, within the span of 1 sentence, they may use it 3, 4 times, one single sentence. No. Grammarian, please comment on that. The other part you pay attention to is, as the name implies, grammar. Pay attention to the proper use of grammar. You can also note quotes that really capture your attention, or you believe captures the attention of the audience, beautifully stated, and things that are done poorly as well. Maybe poor pronunciations or anything that really captures your fancy. Note though, I'm listing a few things and some of you may be thinking, I'm not good at this. That is fine. That is why we are here. If we were perfect, we would not be here at Toastmasters. For the moment, you may pay attention to things you are good at. And because you're trying to improve your scope and your skill when it comes to grammar, there are a few things you're learning. You may start paying attention to them and over time get better. If pronunciation is not what you're good at, diction, then you may not be able to capture some things. However, because you're now searching for that, over time, it may improve. If you feel you're bad at grammar, you may not capture much. That's okay. Because you're now paying attention to it, over time, it improves. You find what you are looking for, which is why I highly recommend, if you think you're bad at grammar, bad at diction, bad at anything pertaining to the role of grammarian, then you are the one that needs to play that role more often, not less. The mistake we often make is, because we think we're bad at things, we do them less, and we push those that we consider to be good to do those things, meaning because they repeat doing it, they get better. And because we're doing it less, we get worse. That's not the aim, especially if you're here. You want to do it as often as you can, especially if you're bad. If this applies to you, the role of grammarian, I highly recommend you play that role. That's a quick summary of what the grammarian does before and during the course of the meeting. Once you deliver your reports at the very end, you're done. Now, let me state this. When you're delivering your reports, please pay attention to time. Depending on how good you are at spotting great use of grammar, poor use of grammar, keeping track of those who use the word of the day, they used it well, used it poorly, you may have quite an ample report that may not fit within the allotted time that was given to you for that meeting. What this means is prioritize. What you consider to be the most important elements, please focus on those things that will fit within the time allotted to you. If you have all the time in the world, then by all means, go through your report. But remember, you're delivering a speech, introduction, report, conclusion, or if you so choose, dive straight into body and have a conclusion, but within the allotted time. There's nothing really that you have to do after the meeting, unless, because time didn't permit, there's feedback you want to give to certain individuals and you think it will help them improve. Then you can do that after the meeting. In summary, that is what the grammarian does. Let me briefly check the chat box. Okay, great. See, more than one person playing the role. I count. Okay. Yes. All right. That's a quick summary of the role of grammarian. Now let's dive into Table Topics Evaluator. Table Topics Evaluator is quite straightforward. I've already given you feedback on Speech Evaluator. Table Topics Evaluator is just reducing that a bit. How so? For Table Topics Evaluator, you don't get the chance to have evaluation slips. You don't get the chance to speak to the speakers before they come up and speak. All you're doing is listening to them deliver their table topic speech within 1 to 2 minutes and giving a general feedback. As I stated earlier, please note, do they seem scared or do they seem confident? For those that seem scared, try to reduce recommendations. Those that are more confident, by all means, you can reel out all the recommendations you have that time permits. The challenge for you is, since you're listening to speakers that you have to evaluate right after each other, you have to quickly pen down whatever you can capture in the short time that you transition from one speaker to the other. Same way, give commendations, give recommendations, and give commendations. But just do it individually for all the speakers. If you have sufficient time, please, you can also evaluate the table topics master, if time permits. If you don't have sufficient time, discard the evaluation of table topics master and focus on evaluating individual speakers. If it's so bad, which I hope it's not, for instance, maybe you're giving 1 minute now. This, I'm hoping, is so abstract and far removed from reality that it will never or rarely ever happen. But you have to evaluate 5 speakers, and because of time, you have 1 minute. I really hope this does not happen, but you have 1 minute. You may somehow collate. I don't even know how to state this because that just seems so ridiculous to me. But you may somehow maybe collate general things people did well, things they didn't do so well, recommendations, how they can improve, and things they did well. I hope that never happens. The ideal is that you're evaluating each individual speakers so they can hear what they did and how they can improve. This is the essence of evaluation. In summary, that's the way to do table topics evaluation. Similar to speech evaluation, but not as specific. That's it for table topics evaluation. Now for our counter, because people have requested for a number of things. Our counter, what do? You need to hone your listening skills. The same way you do it for everyone, but in this case, somehow you need to get yourself so aware and present in the meeting that you're paying attention to everyone that speaks, so you capture their use of pause fillers. The R counter is going to be introduced by the general evaluator. When the general evaluator introduces their team members, what do? You come up and explain what your role is. You're giving a speech, introduction, body, conclusion. And your role is pay attention to everything that is said. Note, you already started doing your job from the very start, by the way, same as grammarian from the very beginning of the meeting. You paid attention to everything that is said at the meeting, and you come back and give feedback on how often people use pause fillers. Explain what the essence of this is. You want us to be better communicators. When people overuse pause fillers. Note, not use, overuse pause fillers. Having a few pause fillers sprinkled during your speech, that's okay. That's normal for most of us. But when it's inundated with pause fillers, it's distracting. It takes away from the effectiveness of your speech. You want to highlight how often they use it so they can minimize or maybe eliminate altogether their use of pause fillers. What are pause fillers? They could be sounds. It could be words. So, and it could be phrases, you know. I'm not aware of anyone that uses sentences for pause fillers, but who knows? I've not lived on this earth for very long. Maybe possible. Sounds, words, phrases. You're going to come back later and for every single speaker, state either the sound, word, or phrase that they used as pause fillers and the number of times they use them as pause fillers. You're also going to crown, generally, the pause filler champion, not to encourage the person to keep using pause fillers, but to highlight the fact that this is one area, if they work on and they minimize it or eliminate it, will probably greatly improve the effectiveness of their communication. Now note, depending on your meeting, if your meeting just has a plethora of pause fillers, you may need to minimize the ones you state, meaning prioritize the most important ones, those that use pause fillers the most. Or if you have time to give the entire report, by all means, name everyone that used them, state the pause fillers, and give the number of times that they use them. But please give it in a speech format. Introduction, body, conclusion, or you could do body and conclusion. That is perfectly okay. I would just love to highlight once again, if you've never done this role before, you have to train yourself to pay attention. I go to meetings and someone says, we didn't have many pause fillers. This person used 3, and I caught at least 10 pause fillers from that specific speaker. Or they say this speaker didn't have any pause fillers, and I caught at least 5. It's part of why we're here. To learn, to get better. Don't say, I cannot listen. It's not possible. If you cannot, then do it more often so you train your brain to do what you cannot do now and get really good later. Do it often, do it quickly, fail, get better faster. Very important. I think a few more messages came in as I was. Yes, pause filler champions. Many clubs do that. Very important. And it's fun. Please try and make it fun. I'm glad I remembered that. Anytime you come to explain your role, please try not to explain it in such a manner that it appears scary. Because the way we respond to things, it's usually how it's perceived, more so than the reality of whatever it may be. What that means is that the way you deliver your speech explaining your role can either help the audience relax or make them get stiff because they are scared. I don't want to use a pause filler. Some people, when they utter one pause filler, say, I used it. That's not the goal. That's not the goal. And if you properly prepare your introduction, it can help them really relax and keep speaking. So if I say, it's not a big deal, I keep speaking because you properly explained it. Your introduction, meaning your explanation of your role, it goes a long way. Many of us are not aware of this, but please take it seriously. Don't think, I'm just there, say whatever I'm doing and go. It's impacting the entire meeting. Very important. For those of you that requested those extra roles, hopefully that was useful. I didn't give time for questions because these are all additional roles for today. But as I stated, hopefully it was beneficial at some level for whatever it is you want to learn these roles for. And that's it. If there are final questions, final comments, we can still take those before we close up shop for the night. Any final questions or comments?
Just something in my bag, right? Okay. It's just something in a bag. There's just something.
Toastmaster Hume, I don't know if intentional, but you are unmuted. Okay. Toastmaster Kudus, please go ahead.
Okay, my comment is not even about any of this. So I can see Diane or Onuminya in the chat, and I kept wondering, are the Onuminyas related?
Yes, yes. That is my younger sister. She just typed in the comment. Yes.
That's great.
Toastmaster Hioma, please go ahead. Don't mind Toastmaster Kudus.
Thank you, Toastmaster John. Your explanation came in very handy. I'll be looking forward to having the more expansive version of the rule. Thank you so much.
I am glad. Any other questions? Any other comments before we just say that's it for tonight? Oh, I see some things in the chat box. Let me quickly check. Okay, that's my sister still responding. Yes, great, great, great. Toastmaster Vivian, thank you for that question. How does one make the intro sound relaxing? The easiest way is to say by preparing, but let me give you an example. Table Topics Master, for example. One Table Topics Master says, welcome to the Table Topics portion of the meeting. This is a very scary session. In fact, many people, when it's Table Topics portion of the meeting, they run away or they hide their face. And I understand because it's scary. Toastmaster Vivian, if you hear that and you're a first-time guest, how would you feel regarding the table topics? Versus the table topics portion is the most exciting portion of it. Every meeting. I know we love the prepared speech segment of the meeting, but table topics, it prepares you for life. I don't think I'm overstating it by saying over 99% of what goes on in life, table topics prepares you for it. And here you get to speak for a minimum of 1 minute, maximum of 2 minutes, and you have this conducive environment where you can speak freely and you'll be supported. If I were not the table topics master, I would volunteer for this segment, and I encourage the guests to volunteer as well. Toastmaster Vivian, did you see a difference?
Absolutely. That was a clear difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
It's something drastic that you need to do. It may just be the words you're using. Yes, your body also speaks. We are here to learn how to speak, right? We need to be better public speakers. But in the way you're presenting the segment, you need to be intentional about it. Present in such a way that it's relaxed, it's fun. People want to participate. People want you to do what you're doing, and they're free to speak, knowing that at the end, the feedback they get will help them improve rather than scar them for life. Take a few moments to intentionally prepare so you know what direction you want to send the audience towards. And of course, you help people to give you, you have people to give you feedback. Mentor, random people, Toastmaster John, if you deem it fit to send it my way. And they will assist you in preparing the type of introduction, preliminary speech, whatever you want to call it, to set the right tone for your audience. It's not as hard as it sounds. It may be foreign to some of us if we've never thought about it. But now that we are aware, please start putting it into practice. This will improve the quality of the meeting greatly, especially, for example, table topics portion. Rather than having no one volunteer, where the volunteering portion takes 2-3 minutes. Does anyone want to volunteer? Why would anyone want to volunteer after you've told them it's the scariest portion of the meeting? Even you run away from it. You can minimize that timeline by stating how exciting it is, how you would have loved the opportunity. And people now feel, oh, wow, maybe I should participate in it. It'll be helpful. And they volunteer quickly if you request for volunteers. I hope that helps. Let me see. I think a few more chats came in. Don't worry, Toastmaster Vivian. Most of us are tense. If you feel you're tense, then get more practice. Very important. But there are many tips as well to help you in that. Any other questions? Any other comments? And it's a pleasure to see Toastmaster Aaron. If it's the same Toastmaster Aaron that I know, one of my past presidents, it's a delight to have you here, sir. Thank you so much for joining.
The same Toastmaster Aaron that you know, John. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you for the training.
Wow. If you don't know Toastmaster Aaron, you need to know him. But he has made me less tense just by being here. Thank you so much. Any questions, any comments? Okay, I think that's it. Just a reminder, we are here every Friday, 9 to 9:30. We'll focus on those roles. If you come late, I'm not going to repeat those roles. However, I will stay behind to talk on other roles that you may be interested in. The goal here is to help you improve as a speaker and a leader, and by extension, improve the quality of your meetings. We pay to become better in Toastmasters. Most of us are here to be better public speakers or better leaders. Some for relationships, business, personal, is part of what we do here. The only way to get better is to learn. And learning is not complete if you don't practice. And what do I mean by this practice? Whatever it is you think you have up here now, put it up there solidly, improve upon it by taking action. Not action a year from now, 3 months from now, as soon as possible. If it's possible tomorrow, please do that. The day after, please do that. Take action and take it often. It's going to make you understand some things I've said, or discard some things I've said and learn new things. But more importantly, you master it. And that is always the goal for learning. The goal of learning is mastery, and you master by repetition. The essence of preparing for a speech is so that you master it. And when you're delivering, you don't have to think about it. The conscious part of your mind, if you think of things, it confuses you. But when you've mastered it, you don't even realize you're doing it. There are so many things I'm doing now, I have no clue that I'm doing it until someone gives me feedback. Why? I've taken the time to master those skill sets. Please sign up for these roles. If you've never played it, you think you're bad at it, you've played it but you want to get better, sign up as soon as possible, as often as possible. Then give us feedback in the WhatsApp chat. The next time we have this training, let us also be motivated, as one of the Toastmasters said. How do you keep up your motivation? One other way is hearing feedback from other people, hearing how they improve. Because when you appear not to be seeing any form of growth, just hearing that there's actually some stage you'll get to where you can see it, highly motivational. Thank you so much for joining. I hope to see those of you that want to learn the roles we'll speak on next Friday, back again next Friday with your questions, your comments. Go and have a restful night. Enjoy your weekend, play the roles, and go and make impact wherever you are. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Have a great night.